The morning sun cast a gentle glow over Ria's capital city, its rays reflecting off the curved glass and polished metal of the colony's towering structures. Nina Hayes stood on the balcony of the Earth Alliance Command Center, gazing out at the peaceful scene below. Farmers tending to their hydroponic gardens, children rushing to school, merchants setting up their stalls in the bustling marketplace, all oblivious to the tension building within the military compound behind her. Nina's uniform felt unusually tight around her neck today. As a young officer of the Earth Alliance, she had joined with idealistic visions of maintaining peace across humanity's expanding frontier. She had never witnessed actual combat. The relative peace between Earth and other species in the Galactic Council had lasted for decades. Diplomatic solutions had prevailed, even during periods of tension. That was why she'd chosen this path, to be part of something that protected without destroying. Enjoying the view while you can, Lieutenant Hayes? The gruff voice belonged to General Matthews, a veteran of conflicts most personnel Nina's age had only read about in history books. His weathered face bore the subtle marks of genetic regeneration treatments, but his eyes remained sharp and calculating. Sir, Nina straightened instantly, just taking a moment before the briefing. Matthews stepped beside her, his gaze sweeping across the cityscape. Peace is a thin veneer, Lieutenant. Remember that. Underneath, the galaxy remains a dangerous place. He tapped his fingers against the railing. Strange readings came in from the orbital scanners last night. Nina frowned. Meteor activity? Perhaps. His tone suggested otherwise. Or perhaps something else. Security Council is reviewing the data now. Before Nina could inquire further, both their communication devices buzzed simultaneously. A priority alert from Command Operations. Unknown object detected entering Ria's upper atmosphere. The message read, "All personnel to alert stations." Nina's heart quickened. Sir, should we issue civilian warnings? Matthews was already moving toward the door. Not yet. Could be nothing. Could be a glitch. Let's not cause unnecessary panic. Nina followed him inside, casting one last glance at the unsuspecting city below. In the command center, officers moved with practiced efficiency between holographic displays and communication stations. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. These were professionals trained to handle anomalies. A large projection in the center of the room displayed Ria's orbital space, with several unidentified objects highlighted in red. Report, Matthews barked as he entered. Multiple objects, sir, not matching any known transportation signatures, answered a young officer. They're maintaining position just outside our defensive perimeter. Have they responded to communication attempts? Negative, sir. No response on any channel. Nina moved to a monitoring station, scanning the incoming data. Energy signatures are fluctuating. I've never seen readings like these. Matthews' expression darkened. Send an urgent communication to Earth Alliance headquarters. Request immediate. His words were cut short by a blinding flash on the main display. Then another, and another. Energy spikes, someone shouted. They're firing. Nina's body tensed as the command center erupted in frantic activity. Warning systems blared throughout the complex. On the monitors, massive energy projections, plasma bombs, streaked toward the colony's surface. Activate planetary shields, Matthews ordered, but his voice contained a note of futility that Nina had never heard before. Shields are non-responsive, sir. Something's interfering with the defense grid. The first impact came seconds later. The floor beneath them shuddered violently. Then came the second strike and the third. The control room's lights flickered as auxiliary power systems engaged. Sir, Nina's voice barely carried over the chaos. We need to evacuate civilians immediately. Matthews nodded grimly. Issue colony-wide emergency protocols. Get as many people to the shelters as possible. Outside, the peaceful morning had transformed into apocalyptic chaos. Massive fireballs rained from the sky, each impact sending shockwaves through the colony structures. Buildings that had stood for generations collapsed in seconds. The air filled with screams and the deafening roar of destruction. Nina raced through the streets toward the residential sector, communicating evacuation orders through her device. Around her, people fled in panic, parents clutching children, others helping the injured, many simply running with no clear destination. A particularly violent explosion rocked the ground beneath her, sending Nina sprawling onto the pavement. When she looked up, the primary school building ahead had been reduced to rubble. Without thinking, she rushed forward, clambering over debris, calling out for survivors. Help! The voice was faint, coming from beneath a collapsed wall section. Nina dropped to her knees, frantically pushing aside smaller pieces of debris. She found a small boy, perhaps 7 years old, pinned beneath a beam. His face was streaked with dust and blood, eyes wide with terror. "Hold on," Nina assured him, searching for a way to leverage the beam. "I'm going to get you out." The boy's eyes suddenly shifted to something above and behind her. Nina turned just as another plasma bomb struck a nearby building. The shockwave threw her backward, and when she regained her senses seconds later, the spot where the boy had been was now buried under tons of additional debris. "No!" Nina screamed, lunging forward again, but strong hands pulled her back. A fellow officer dragged her away as more buildings began to collapse around them. "We can't stay here, Lieutenant. The whole block is coming down." Through tears and dust, Nina watched as more plasma bombs continued to fall. For the first time in her life, she felt a rage so intense it threatened to consume her. Who would do this? Who would target civilians with such indiscriminate brutality? Hours later, as emergency teams struggled to contain fires and rescue survivors, what remained of Ria's military command gathered in an underground bunker. Reports filtering in painted a grim picture, not just of Ria, but across human space. Valis and Orion's Nest, Earth's other major colonies, had been attacked simultaneously. Casualty estimates were staggering, already in the hundreds of thousands and climbing. "We have preliminary identification," Matthews announced to the somber gathering. His uniform was torn and stained with blood that wasn't his own. Internal intelligence sources confirmed the attackers are Alcrines. A murmur swept through the room. The Alcrines, a technologically advanced species with whom humanity had maintained cool but stable relations for years. "What's the official response from Earth?" someone asked. Matthew's expression hardened. "Earth Alliance has issued no public statement. The Galactic Council has called for an emergency session. The Alcrines are claiming it was a technical malfunction during routine weapons testing." Malfunction? Nina couldn't contain her outrage. They targeted civilian centers across 3 colonies simultaneously. "I know, Lieutenant," Matthews replied quietly. "But for now, Earth Alliance is deliberating its response." "Deliberating?" another officer sputtered. "While our people are dying?" Matthews met each of their gazes in turn. "That's the official position. For now." Something in his tone, a dangerous undercurrent, caught Nina's attention. There was more happening than what was being said aloud. But before she could process this thought, an aide hurried into the room. "Sir," the aide addressed Matthews, "you're needed on a secure channel. Earth Alliance Command." As Matthews left the room, Nina couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the apparent inaction, something much darker was brewing. On Earth, media outlets broadcast horrific images from the colonies. Footage of devastated cities, makeshift morgues overflowing with bodies, children searching for parents who would never be found. Public outrage was building by the hour, with demonstrations forming outside government buildings in every major city. People demanded action, immediate and decisive retaliation against the Alcrines. Yet the Earth Alliance remained conspicuously silent. 3 days after the attacks, Nina received unexpected orders. She was to return to Earth immediately to provide a first-hand report of the Rhea attack to Alliance High Command. The transport vessel that collected her was unlike any military craft she had seen before. Sleek, almost predatory in design, with systems far more advanced than standard Earth Alliance technology. During the journey, Nina tried to piece together what little information she had. The death toll across the 3 colonies had surpassed 500,000. Relief efforts were underway, but resources were stretched thin. The Galactic Council had issued a statement deeply regretting the incident and inviting Alcrine representatives to explain their actions. Meanwhile, the Alcrines had maintained their position that the colonies had been built too close to their weapons testing zones, a blatant lie that enraged Nina every time she thought about it. The children she had seen dying in the streets were nowhere near any legitimate military target. Upon arrival at Earth Alliance headquarters in Geneva, Nina was escorted through corridors she hadn't known existed, deep beneath the public-facing sections of the facility. Security was unlike anything she had experienced before: genetic scanners, neural pattern recognition, authorization protocols that seemed excessive even for the highest levels of military command. While waiting in an anteroom, she overheard two senior officers in conversation as they passed. Revenant protocol has been initiated. The Silent Legion is being prepped. After all these years, I never thought we'd see the day. The Alcrines have no idea what they've awakened. Nina's pulse quickened. Revenant protocol? Silent Legion? These terms appeared in no official Earth Alliance documentation she had ever encountered. A door slid open, revealing General Matthews. He looked different somehow, more focused, radiating a cold intensity that hadn't been present on Rhea. "Lieutenant Hayes," he acknowledged. "Follow me." He led her into a circular chamber where a dozen high-ranking officers sat around a table. At its head stood a man Nina recognized instantly: Grand Admiral Ulysses Grant, Supreme Commander of Earth's military forces. His presence here, in this secret facility, underscored the gravity of the situation. "Lieutenant Hayes," Grant's voice was deeper than Nina had expected. "Your report from Rhea will be valuable. But first, you need to understand what we're about to show you." A holographic display activated in the center of the table, showing what appeared to be a massive underground facility. The camera panned across rows upon rows of metallic pods, each approximately 2 meters in length. "What you're seeing," Grant continued, "is humanity's insurance policy, hidden beneath the surface of Mars since the last interstellar conflict nearly 50 years ago." Matthews took over. After that war, Earth's leadership recognized that conventional military forces would never be sufficient against certain threats. So a decision was made to create a force unlike any other. Soldiers selected from the best Earth had to offer, enhanced beyond normal human capabilities, and then placed in stasis until truly needed. Nina stared at the pods, realization dawning. "These are people." "The Ghost Division," Grant confirmed. "Or as some call them, the Silent Legion. 5,000 soldiers, each with neural enhancements, biomechanical augmentations, and combat training beyond anything in our standard forces. They don't age in stasis. They don't question orders. They exist for one purpose: to respond when humanity faces extinction-level threats. And the Alcrines qualify as such a threat?" Nina asked. Matthew's expression hardened. "Their attack wasn't a mistake, Lieutenant. Intelligence indicates they were testing our response capabilities, gauging our strength before a larger invasion. Their excuse about weapons testing is a cover for their true intentions. They've been planning this for years." "But why hasn't Earth Alliance announced any response?" Nina asked. "People are desperate for action, for justice." Grant exchanged glances with the other officers before responding. "Because we need the Alcrines to believe they've crippled us, that we're scrambling, disorganized, incapable of meaningful retaliation." His eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "While we awaken our real army." The following day, Nina found herself aboard a transport heading toward Mars. As an eyewitness to the Rhea attack, she had been selected to observe the activation of the Ghost Division, partly to provide context for the mission, and partly, she suspected, because someone wanted her to see firsthand what was about to be unleashed upon the Alcrines. The facility was carved deep into the Martian bedrock, far from the established colonies and research stations. As they descended in a high-speed elevator, Nina felt the weight of atmosphere pressing against her, both literally and figuratively. They were about to wake an army that had slept for half a century. The stasis chamber was exactly as the hologram had shown, row upon row of metallic pods, each containing a soldier who had volunteered for this program decades ago. Medical personnel and technicians moved between the pods, initiating revival sequences with practiced precision. The revival process takes approximately 6 hours, explained Dr. Eleanor Voss, the chief medical officer overseeing the procedure. Their bodies need to readjust gradually to prevent cellular degradation. Nina watched in fascination as the first pod's cover retracted with a soft hiss. Cold vapor billowed out, revealing a man who appeared to be in his early 30s. His eyes snapped open immediately, alert, focused, unnaturally aware for someone who had been unconscious for decades. Soldier RC 137, Dr. Voss spoke clearly. Status report. The man sat up in a single fluid motion. Fully operational, doctor. Awaiting mission parameters. Minimal activity during stasis, Matthews explained, appearing beside her. Keeps their minds engaged in combat simulations and tactical exercises. In their perception, they've been training continuously. Nina watched as the soldiers moved to preparation areas, where they were issued equipment unlike anything in Earth's standard arsenal. Adaptive armor that seemed to absorb light at certain angles, weapons with unfamiliar configurations, communications devices that attach directly to their temples. They're being briefed on 50 years of technological developments? Nina asked. Matthews shook his head. Unnecessary. Their enhancements allow them to interface directly with any weapon system. They'll understand how to operate everything within minutes of handling it. As the day progressed, Nina was escorted to another facility, a massive underground hangar housing spacecraft she had never seen before. Black-holed vessels with predatory lines, no external markings or lights. These were ships designed for one purpose: to arrive undetected and deliver devastation. Phantom-class carriers, Matthews stated with evident pride, equipped with advanced stealth systems and enough firepower to level a city. They've been hidden in Saturn's rings, maintained by automated systems until needed. How did Earth hide all this? Nina wondered aloud. The resources required, the technology, compartmentalization. Everyone involved knew only their piece of the puzzle. Funding hidden in plain sight within civilian research budgets. And most importantly, the absolute conviction that someday we would need it. Matthews turned to face her directly. That day has come, Lieutenant. Our first target is the Alcrian command station at Vilios 9. When the Ghost Division deploys in 12 hours. You and several other officers will observe from a command vessel. Consider it educational. The attack on Vilios 9 unfolded with a precision that left Nina breathless. The Phantom carriers approached undetected, their presence completely masked from Alcrian sensors. There were no warnings, no ultimatums, just sudden, overwhelming force. The first wave consisted of drop pods, individual assault vehicles that shot from the carriers like bullets, punching through the outer hull of the Alcrian station before their occupants emerged. Each ghost soldier moved with inhuman speed and coordination, neutralizing defense systems and security personnel before alarms could even be triggered. From the command vessel, Nina and the other observers watched through the helmet cameras of the assault teams. The Alcrians, tall, gray-skinned beings with elongated limbs, seemed to move in slow motion compared to the ghost soldiers. Their weapons, formidable by normal standards, barely penetrated the advanced armor of the humans. Sector 3 secured, reported one team leader, his voice unervingly calm despite the chaos visible through his camera feed. Moving to command center. Within 20 minutes, the entire station, a facility that housed over 5,000 Alcrian military personnel, had fallen under Ghost Division control. Casualties among the Earth forces, 0. I've never seen anything like this, muttered an officer beside Nina. That's the point, Matthews replied, watching the feeds with satisfaction. The Alcrians built their strategy on the assumption that humans fight wars like humans. The Ghost Division doesn't fight like humans. They fight like machines, but with human intuition. On one of the screens, a ghost soldier reached the central command platform of the station. With deliberate motions, he unfurled an Earth flag and secured it to a console. Then he turned to face the camera directly. For Rhea, he stated flatly. For Valis. For Orion's nest. Message to all Alcrian forces. You bombed our children. Now we rise. The message was transmitted across all Alcrian communication channels, along with footage of the station's fall. It was psychological warfare at its most efficient, showing the enemy exactly what had happened, but revealing nothing about how it had been accomplished. In the days that followed, the galaxy witnessed a transformation in the conflict. The Alcrian leadership, initially dismissive of Earth's capabilities, now found themselves in disarray. Their military installations were being systematically targeted and neutralized by an enemy they couldn't detect until it was already inside their defenses. Velios 9 was just the beginning. The Ghost Division struck 3 more Alcrian outposts within the next 48 hours, each attack more devastating than the last. But it was during the 4th attack that Nina noticed something troubling. The target was a manufacturing facility on a moon orbiting an Alcrian colony world. As the Ghost soldiers secured the complex, Nina observed through their feeds that civilian workers were present, Alcrian engineers and support staff who were clearly non-combatants. While the soldiers didn't deliberately target these civilians, their single-minded focus on the mission resulted in collateral damage that made Nina increasingly uncomfortable. Should we be evacuating the civilians first? She asked Matthews during the operation. He gave her a sidelong glance. This isn't a peacekeeping mission, Lieutenant. It's retribution. But isn't this exactly what the Alcrians did to us? Attack without distinguishing between military and civilian targets. Matthews' expression hardened. The difference is that they started this war. We're finishing it. Nina wasn't sure that distinction justified what she was witnessing, but she held her tongue. Something was shifting inside her. The raw anger she had felt on Rhea was being tempered by a growing unease about the nature of the response. After 2 weeks of relentless assault, the Alcrian High Command convened an emergency session in their capital city on Alcrian Prime. Intelligence gathered by Earth's covert operatives revealed a leadership fractured by panic and disagreement. Half of them want to surrender immediately, reported Intelligence Director Miranda Frost during the daily briefing. The other half, led by High Commander Mardak, is pushing for deployment of something called Obscure Protocol. What is that? Nina asked. Frost's expression was grim. We're not entirely sure. Historical records indicate it might be a weapon system developed centuries ago, during the Alcrian's war with the Vorx Collective. Whatever it is, it was supposedly sealed away due to ethical concerns, even by Alcrian standards. General Matthews leaned forward. If they're considering breaking their own ethical constraints, then we're winning. Time to push them over the edge. Admiral Grant has authorized the direct assault on their orbital shipyards at Crescia. Crescia was more than a shipyard. It was the crown jewel of Alcrian military power, where their most advanced vessels were constructed. A successful attack would cripple their ability to project force for generations. The assault on Crescia began like the others, silent, swift, and overwhelming. 3 Phantom carriers deployed over 2,000 Ghost soldiers in a coordinated attack that breached the station's defenses within minutes. Nina watched from the command vessel, now familiar with the ruthless efficiency of the operation. But this time, something changed halfway through the mission. Unknown energy signature detected in Section 5, reported a Ghost soldier. Configuration doesn't match any known Alcrian technology. The camera feed from that sector showed a strange, shimmering distortion in the air, like heat waves, but more structured, more deliberate. As the soldiers approached to investigate, the distortion suddenly expanded, enveloping 3 of them instantly. When the anomaly cleared, the soldiers were gone. In their place stood something else, a grotesque amalgamation of organic and mechanical parts that only vaguely resembled an Alcrian. Its movements were jerky but incredibly fast, and when it attacked the remaining soldiers, their armor, which had withstood direct hits from Alcrian weapons, was breached as though made of paper. What the hell is that? Someone shouted in the command center. More anomalies appeared throughout the station. With each one, more of these hybrid creatures emerged. The Ghost soldiers fought back with everything they had, but their advantage of surprise was gone. For the first time, they were facing something they hadn't been programmed to counter. Pull them out, Matthews ordered, his face ashen. Immediate extraction. The retreat was chaotic, something Nina had never expected to see from the Ghost Division. Of the 2,000 soldiers deployed to Kresha, only 1,200 made it back to the carriers. The rest were either confirmed killed or missing in action. That, Matthews said grimly once they were safely away, was obscure protocol. Admiral Grant convened an emergency council as soon as the survivors returned to the fleet. The mood was somber. This was the first significant setback for the Ghost Division, and no one quite understood what they had encountered. Based on the data we gathered, Dr. Voss explained, displaying holographic representations of the creatures, obscure protocol appears to be a biomechanical weapon system that uses the genetic material of its victims to create new units. It's part machine, part biological entity, with a distributed intelligence network. In simpler terms, Matthews added, it's a self-replicating weapon that turns our soldiers into more of itself. Nina felt a chill run down her spine. Can it be stopped? Everything can be stopped, Grant said firmly. The question is how, and at what cost? Their answer came from an unexpected source. One of the Ghost Division soldiers who had managed to capture data from Kresha's central computer before the evacuation. Obscure. Protocol has a control center, explained the soldier, designated RC-293. His face showed no emotion as he presented his findings. Located in an underground facility beneath Alcrian Prime's North Polar region, the system requires constant input from its creators to maintain stability. Without guidance, it will eventually turn on everything, including the Alcrians themselves. Grant's expression was grim but determined. Then we have our next target. We take out the control center, we neutralize their weapon. Sir, Nina interjected, if obscure protocol is as dangerous as we believe, wouldn't the Alcrians be willing to negotiate rather than risk losing control of it? Grant considered her words briefly. Perhaps, but negotiation isn't why we awakened the Ghost Division, Lieutenant. They weren't designed for peace talks. They were designed to eliminate threats to humanity's existence. The plan that emerged was the most ambitious yet, a direct assault on Alcrian Prime itself. While the main Ghost Division force would engage Alcrian defenses as a diversion, a smaller team would infiltrate the obscure protocol control facility and plant a devastation device, essentially a miniaturized fusion bomb capable of vaporizing everything within a 10-kilometer radius. Nina was shocked to learn she had been assigned to the infiltration team. You've shown aptitude for adaptation, Lieutenant, Matthews told her when she questioned the decision. The team needs someone who can think beyond their programming if the situation changes. The Ghost soldiers are formidable, but they operate best with clear parameters. This mission may require flexibility. The journey to Alcrian Prime took 3 days. During that time, Nina spent hours with the 5 Ghost soldiers assigned to her team, trying to understand these people who were simultaneously human and something more, or less, than human. Their leader, RC-137, the first soldier she had seen awakened, maintained a professional distance but answered her questions with surprising thoughtfulness. Do you remember your life before? She asked him during one of their tactical sessions. Before you joined the Ghost Division? RC-137 paused his weapons check. Yes, I was a sergeant in the Earth Marine Corps. I had a wife. We were planning to have children. And you volunteered for this? Knowing you might not wake up for decades, if ever. I did. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Nina saw something genuinely human there. Because I believed that someday, humanity would face an enemy it couldn't defeat through conventional means. I wanted to be the shield that stood ready when that day came. Do you ever regret it? He returned to his weapon. Regret is counterproductive to mission efficiency, Lieutenant. That's not an answer. No, he admitted after a pause. I don't regret it. Especially now, seeing what happened to your colonies. This is exactly the scenario I entered stasis to prevent. The conversation stayed with Nina as they approached Alcrian Prime. What kind of conviction would drive someone to surrender their entire life, to be transformed into something both more and less than human, all for the sake of a future they might never see? The assault began exactly as planned. The main Ghost Division force engaged the Alcrian planetary defenses, drawing attention away from the smaller insertion team. Nina's group approached in a stealth shuttle, slipping through gaps in the sensor coverage created by the larger battle. They landed 3 kilometers from the control facility entrance, in a ravine that shielded them from detection. The landscape of Alcrian Prime was starkly beautiful, towering crystalline formations jutting from rocky plains under a pale purple sky. "Move out," RC-137 ordered once they had secured their landing zone. "Maintain stealth protocols until we reach the facility perimeter." They advanced through the rough terrain with practiced efficiency, the ghost soldiers moving with a fluidity that made Nina's own trained movements seem clumsy by comparison. Their enhanced vision and augmented awareness allowed them to detect potential threats long before she could. When they reached the edge of a ridge overlooking the facility, RC-137 signaled them to halt. Below, they could see the entrance, a massive door set into the side of a mountain, heavily guarded by Alcrian security forces. But something wasn't right. The guards appeared agitated, almost panicked in their movements. "Something's happening," Nina whispered. "They're not in defensive positions. They look like they're preparing to evacuate." RC-137 activated his enhanced vision. Confirmed. The facility is being sealed from within. Emergency protocols in effect. Before they could discuss further, the ground beneath them trembled violently. From the entrance below, several Alcrians emerged running, clearly fleeing something inside. Behind them came one of the hybrid creatures they had encountered at Crescia, but larger, more complex in its structure. The creature caught the fleeing Alcrians easily, absorbing them into its mass with horrifying efficiency. With each absorption, it grew larger, more elaborate in its construction. "Obscure protocol is out of control," RC-137 stated flatly. "The Alcrians have lost containment." Nina felt a chill of realization. If those things get out of this facility and spread across the planet. Extinction event, RC-137 confirmed. Not just for Alcrians. These hybrids can utilize any organic material. If they reach space, entire systems could fall. Their mission had just transformed from an act of retribution to something far more urgent, preventing a threat that could potentially destroy all life in this sector of the galaxy. They approached the facility with new purpose, no longer concerned with stealth, but with speed. The hybrid creatures, now multiple in number, were focused on consuming the fleeing Alcrians, giving Nina's team an opportunity to slip past them into the facility. Inside, the corridors were bathed in eerie red emergency lighting. Dead Alcrians littered the floors, some partially transformed into mechanical components. The deeper they ventured, the more evident it became that whatever containment system had held obscure protocol in check had catastrophically failed. "Life signs ahead," reported one of the ghost soldiers. Multiple Alcrians, centralized location approximately 200 meters further. They followed a curving passageway down to what appeared to be the main control chamber, a vast circular room dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure at its center. Around it, a dozen Alcrians worked frantically at control stations, while security personnel fought a losing battle against encroaching hybrid creatures at the far entrance. Among the Alcrians, one stood out, taller, with elaborate markings on his gray skin. High Commander Mardak, recognizable from intelligence briefings. RC-137 raised his weapon. Target identified, proceeding with primary mission. "Wait," Nina urged, grabbing his arm, a gesture that clearly surprised him. "Look at what they're doing. They're trying to shut it down." Indeed, the Alcrians at the consoles were clearly attempting to deactivate the pulsing crystal, which Nina now recognized as the heart of obscure protocol. Mardak himself was manipulating what appeared to be an override system, his movements desperate. Mission parameters require elimination of the control center and all hostile forces, RC-137 stated, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Nina made a split-second decision. New parameters. We help them shut it down, then set the device. If they fail, everyone dies anyway, including us. If they succeed, we complete our mission more efficiently. RC-137 processed this logic, then nodded sharply. Engaging hostile hybrids. Lieutenant, make contact with Alcrene Command. The ghost soldiers moved with blinding speed, engaging the hybrid creatures with devastating effectiveness. Their presence instantly shifted the balance, giving the Alcrene security forces a fighting chance to hold the line. Nina approached Mardak, her weapon lowered but ready. Hi, Commander. I'm Lieutenant Hayes, Earth Alliance. Mardak's large eyes widened in shock. Humans. Here. His grasp of Earth standard was surprisingly good. We came to destroy this facility, Nina said bluntly. But it seems you've saved us the trouble of starting the process. What happened? Mardak's expression shifted to one of shame. Obscure protocol was never meant to be awakened. It was sealed away by our ancestors for good reason. But we were desperate. Your ghost division, he spat the words, was unstoppable. We thought we could control it long enough to force you to withdraw. Well, that worked out brilliantly, Nina replied with bitter sarcasm. Now it's threatening all of us. The shutdown sequence requires time, Mardak explained urgently. The system must power down gradually, or it will trigger a catastrophic release of energy. We need 15 minutes. Nina glanced at the battle raging at the entrance. The hybrid creatures were multiplying faster than they could be destroyed. You don't have 15 minutes. We've brought a devastation device that will vaporize this entire facility. No. Mardak's eyes widened in genuine horror. A sudden energy release of that magnitude will accelerate Obscure Protocol's final evolutionary stage. It would create a chain reaction that could consume the entire planet within hours. Nina felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The devastation device in her pack suddenly felt like it might burn through her back. They had come here to deliver retribution, to end the Alcrene threat once and for all. But what if, in doing so, they unleashed something far worse? She tapped her communication link. RC-137, hold position. Do not activate the device. Lieutenant. His voice came back immediately. Mission parameters are clear. The parameters have changed, she snapped. If we detonate now, we trigger a planetary extinction event that could spread beyond Alcrene Prime. There was a brief pause. Acknowledged. Awaiting new instructions. Nina turned back to Mardak. You have 5 minutes to convince me you can shut this down safely. The Alcrene leader worked feverishly, his elongated fingers dancing across the control interfaces. Obscure Protocol was designed as the ultimate adaptive weapon. It learns from every organism it consumes, incorporating their biological advantages into itself. But the original architects built in a shutdown sequence, a specific genetic key that would trigger system hibernation. And you have this key? I am the key, Mardak replied grimly. My bloodline was engineered to carry the shutdown sequence in our genetic code. But I need to reach the central core directly. Nina looked at the pulsing crystal, now surrounded by a seething mass of hybrid material that seemed to be growing by the second. That's suicide. Yes. Mardak's voice was resigned. But it is the only way to ensure the protocol truly deactivates instead of merely going dormant. A massive explosion rocked the chamber as one of the hybrids breached the defensive line. RC-137 and his team fought with mechanical precision, but they were being slowly pushed back. Lieutenant, he called, we cannot maintain this position beyond 3 minutes. Nina made her decision. RC-137, new mission parameters. Assist the Alcrene leader in reaching the central core. We're going to help them shut this down properly. For a fraction of a second, she thought he might refuse, that his programming would override her command. Then he nodded sharply. Understood. Format escort formation. What followed was a desperate push toward the crystal core. The ghost soldiers formed a wedge around Mardak, with Nina close behind. They fought through layers of increasingly dense hybrid material, their advanced weapons carving a path that closed almost as quickly as it opened. 2 of the ghost soldiers fell, their bodies immediately consumed by the encroaching mass. The remaining three pushed forward with even greater determination, their weapons operating at power levels that would soon burn out the circuitry. When they finally reached the core, RC-137 and his remaining team established a perimeter, holding back the hybrid creatures with increasingly desperate measures. "You have 30 seconds," RC-137 informed Mardak. "After that, we cannot guarantee containment." Mardak stepped toward the crystal, which pulsed more rapidly as he approached. He placed his palms against its surface, and Nina watched in horrified fascination as tendrils of the material snaked up his arms, penetrating his skin. "It's beginning the genetic scan," Mardak gasped, pain evident in his voice. "If the key is accepted, the shutdown will commence." The seconds stretched like hours. The hybrid mass surged against the ghost soldier's defensive position. One more fell, leaving only RC-137 and one other still fighting. Then, suddenly, the crystal's pulsing changed rhythm, becoming slower, more regular. The hybrid creatures paused in their advance, trembling as though confused. "It's working," Mardak whispered, his body now half absorbed into the crystal. "The protocol recognizes the shutdown sequence." The crystalline structure began to dim, its angry red glow fading to pink, then a dull orange. The hybrid creatures started to collapse, their composite forms breaking down into inert components. Nina approached Mardak, who was now almost completely merged with the crystal. Only his face remained visible, set in an expression of pained determination. "Why?" she asked, the question encompassing everything: the initial attack on Earth's colonies, the awakening of obscure protocol, and now his sacrifice. "The attack was never supposed to target civilians," he replied, his voice growing fainter. "It was to be a demonstration against military targets only, to force concessions from Earth in territorial disputes. But those who executed the attack, they went beyond their orders. And this," Nina gestured to the dying protocol around them. "Desperation. Fear." His eyes, already growing dim, fixed on hers. "The same reasons your people created the Ghost Division. We are not so different, human." The crystal gave one final pulse, then went dark. Mardak's features froze, becoming just another feature in the now inert structure. Throughout the chamber, the hybrid creatures collapsed into piles of lifeless mechanical and organic debris. RC-137 approached, his armor scorched and damaged, but his movements still precise. "Target neutralized," awaiting instructions regarding the devastation device. Nina looked around at the destruction, at the bodies of Alcrians who had died, trying to stop what their leaders had started. At the remains of ghost soldiers who had fallen to contain a threat to all life. At Mardak, whose final act had been one of redemption. "We're taking it back," she decided. "This facility is dead. There's nothing left to destroy." RC-137 studied her face. The mission parameters included elimination of the Alcrian leadership structure. "The mission parameters have changed," Nina repeated firmly. "We came here to end a threat to humanity. That threat is gone." After a moment, he nodded, acknowledged, preparing for extraction. As they made their way back through the facility, now eerily silent with the collapse of obscure protocol, Nina couldn't help but reflect on how quickly everything had changed. They had arrived as executioners, carriers of Earth's vengeance. They were leaving as survivors of a near catastrophe that had threatened everyone equally. When they reached the surface, they found the landscape transformed. Scattered groups of Alcrian civilians were evacuating the area, clearly terrified by what had occurred within the facility. They regarded the human team with fear, but didn't attempt to engage them. The extraction ship was waiting at the rendezvous point, with General Matthews himself on board. "Report," he demanded as soon as they were aboard. Nina explained what had happened, including Mardak's sacrifice and her decision not to deploy the devastation device. She expected anger, perhaps even accusations of insubordination. Instead, Matthews listened silently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for several long moments. "You made a judgment call in the field," he finally said. based on the information you had at the time. Yes, sir. And that call potentially saved this planet from becoming a vector for a threat that could have spread across the galaxy. It appears so, sir. Matthews nodded slowly. I'm not sure it's the call I would have made, Lieutenant, but it may have been the right one. The journey back to the fleet was conducted in tense silence. The broader assault on Alcrian Prime had been called off once Matthews received Nina's report about the obscure protocol situation. Now, the Ghost Division vessels hung in space at a safe distance, their sleek black hulls reflecting the distant stars as they awaited new orders. Admiral Grant received their report aboard his flagship. Unlike Matthews, his reaction was immediate and unmistakable. You violated direct orders, he stated, his voice cold with controlled anger. The mission was to eliminate the threat. All of it. With respect, Admiral, Nina replied, standing rigidly at attention. The parameters of the threat changed once we were on the ground. Detonating the device would have accelerated the problem, not solved it. That's your assessment. We only have the word of an Alcrian commander, the very people who bombed our colonies, to support that theory. I stand by my decision, sir. Grant's gaze was penetrating. And what about justice for Rhea? For Valis? For Orion's Nest? For 500,000 dead civilians? The question struck Nina like a physical blow. The memories of Rhea, of the dying boy she couldn't save, flooded back with painful clarity. The Alcrian leadership has been destabilized, Matthews interjected, surprising Nina with what seemed like support. Their military capabilities have been severely degraded. And based on communications we're intercepting, there's a significant power struggle happening in their government right now between hardliners and those advocating for immediate peace talks. Grant considered this. So we've wounded them, but not finished them. We've demonstrated what happens when they provoke us, Matthews countered. They now know about the Ghost Division. They've seen what we're capable of. That changes the calculation for them permanently. After a long pause, Grant nodded reluctantly. Very well. The Ghost Division will maintain position while we assess the evolving situation. Lieutenant Hayes, you'll be debriefed fully by intelligence before returning to regular duty. As Nina left the Admiral's presence, she felt a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. The immediate crisis had passed, but the deeper questions remained unanswered. How would humanity move forward from here? What would happen to the Ghost Division now that their existence was known? RC-137 was waiting in the corridor outside. His armor had been repaired, erasing all evidence of the desperate battle they had survived together. Lieutenant, he acknowledged, I've been informed that our unit is being placed back in stasis pending further need. Nina felt an unexpected pang at this news. So soon? I thought with the situation still unresolved. The Ghost Division was not designed for extended deployment, he explained. Our enhancements require significant resources to maintain. Stasis is the most efficient state for us between missions. I see. Nina hesitated, then asked the question that had been haunting her. Was it worth it? Giving up your life, your future, to become this? RC-137's expression remained impassive, but his eyes, still human despite everything else that had been changed, held something that might have been conviction. We did what we were created to do, he said simply. We showed an enemy that humanity is not to be underestimated, that our apparent weakness is sometimes just a mask for strength being held in reserve. But at what cost to yourselves? No greater than what any soldier throughout history has been willing to pay. He straightened slightly. We sleep now. Perhaps for another 50 years. Perhaps forever. But we sleep knowing we served our purpose. With that, he turned and walked away, his movements precise and measured. Nina watched him go, a soldier returning to a tomb of his own choosing, a sentinel willing to exist outside of time itself for the sake of those who would never know his name. 3 months later, Nina stood on a viewing platform overlooking the reconstruction efforts on Rhea. The colony was slowly rebuilding from the devastation of the Alcrian attack. New buildings were rising from the rubble, their designs more resilient, their purposes unchanged: schools, hospitals, homes. Life stubbornly reasserting itself. Behind her, a door slid open. General Matthews joined her at the railing, his gaze taking in the same scene. Progress is good, he noted. The new defense grid is online. Nothing will catch us by surprise again. The Alcrines have maintained their ceasefire, Nina observed. It wasn't quite peace. Formal negotiations were still ongoing through Galactic Council intermediaries, but the immediate threat had subsided. They have, Matthews agreed. Their new government seems more reasonable, and they're well aware that any aggression would result in the Ghost Division being reactivated. Nina thought about RC-137 and his comrades, back in their stasis pods beneath the Martian surface. Sleeping sentinels, dreaming of battles that might never come. Was it always the plan? She asked. To keep the Ghost Division secret until absolutely necessary? Matthews nodded slowly. The most effective deterrent is one your enemy doesn't know exists until it's too late. Now that they've seen it, the division becomes a different kind of deterrent. Visible, known, feared. And if we need them again, then they'll rise, Matthews said simply. That's the promise they made. That's the purpose they serve. Nina looked back at the rebuilding colony. Children were playing in a newly constructed park not far from where she had tried and failed to save that boy during the attack. The memory still hurt, but alongside it now was something else, a determination that such scenes would not be repeated. We should remember what almost happened, she said quietly. How close we came to unleashing something worse than what we were fighting against. Matthews gave her a measuring look. A lesson for the future, Lieutenant. Weapons, even the most powerful ones, are tools. It's how we choose to use them that matters. As the sun set over the colony, casting long shadows across the construction sites and bustling restoration teams, Nina thought about those words. About choices made in the heat of battle and their long-term consequences. About sleeping soldiers and the price of security. Earth's real army had risen. It had shown the galaxy that humanity was not the vulnerable, easy target the Alcrines had believed. And now it slept again, a secret weapon transformed into a public warning. The colonies would recover. Life would continue. And somewhere in the darkness of space, potential enemies would remember the Ghost Division and think twice before testing humanity's resolve again. For Nina Hayes, the young officer who had witnessed it all, the future held new purpose. She would carry the lessons learned about war and peace, vengeance and restraint, the visible face of humanity and its hidden strengths, and, perhaps most importantly, about when to fight without mercy and when to step back from the precipice of something worse than war. They had bombed Earth's colonies. Humanity's real army had risen in response. And in that rising and what followed, both sides had glimpsed a truth that transcended their conflict. Then the vastness of the galaxy, the greatest threat was not always the enemy you could see, but what you might become in fighting them.